completing a couple of house projects. I wasn't satisfied with this after considering it for a while, so I later asked him what would be a nice thing to do on your birthday. He looked at me for a moment and started talking. We live on Long Island, New York. On the South Shore is a series of bays and barrier islands that are set up as beaches. There's a causeway that connects the main island to the beaches on the barrier islands. We visit the beach several times a week in the summer, driving over that causeway. He said that he thinks it would be nice to drive across the causeway early in the morning before the road got busy to drive slow to enjoy the view. He's always the driver and it's difficult to appreciate the view when trying to keep an eye on the road, and that he always wanted to be the passenger so that he could focus entirely on the view of the sun coming up over the bay and the Atlantic. Then he just smiled and turned his focus back to what he was working on. We've driven over that bridge maybe 1,000 times together. He's always driven. I felt like an absolute jerk. The morning of his birthday, we woke up early, made some coffee, and I drove him over the causeway to the beaches and back. I drove slow and he stared out at the view on both sides of the car. When we made it back over the causeway, he asked if we could do it again, and so we did. And when we made it off the causeway the second time, I asked if he wanted to go again, but he said no, that he was hungry and wanted to go home. I don't know if it was my imagination or not, but I thought he looked happier that day than I had seen him in a long time. He busied himself working on the deck, and I closed myself in the bathroom and fought off sobbing because all he wanted for his birthday was to look at the water. I got him another dumb watch that he'll put with all his other watches and never wear. I got him a watch because I don't know the man I've been married to for a decade who I have spent over 15 years of my life with. The next week I asked him what would be a nice thing to do on Saturday. He said he always wanted to go to the Cradle of Aviation Museum ever since it had its major renovation. I looked it up. It reopened following that renovation in 2002. We were 14. He basically wanted to go there his entire life and hasn't made it. It's 20 minutes away from where we live. When I asked him why he never went, he said he'd been busy with work, so I took him to the museum. I knew he always was interested in aerospace. His father and grandparents were all involved in that industry. When we got home from it, he went to work on our new planters out back, and I couldn't stop myself from sobbing in the bathroom. With Father's Day coming up, I asked him what would be a nice thing to do on Father's Day. I always gave him a Father's Day gift from our dog, and we have people over. I asked him what would be a nice gift from our dog this year. He said that he thinks it would be nice if we drove out to the National Cemetery of Calverton to visit his father's grave, and he then said he didn't need anything for a gift. When I pressed him on it, he said he's not a father. We don't have kids. My father's dead. I don't have anything to celebrate. And I just broke down sobbing there in front of him. He thought I was upset about not having had kids, but truth is that we never prioritized it, and it was too late medically for me when we tried. He had always taken a whatever happens approach to the topic of parenthood, neither wanting nor not wanting children, but I was upset because in that moment I realized that he didn't want anything I had pushed on him on Father's Day and had made the mistake of prioritizing him over his feelings. His father passed weeks before our wedding. His father's goal was to live long enough to attend our wedding, but the cancer was too far along. I let him take and stake for 10 years on Father's Day without realizing his thoughts were on the other side of the island at his father's grave. I failed him for our entire relationship. He asked me for absolutely nothing except to not make a fuss over him, and I failed at even doing that.
My spoiled sister is demanding I give up my company because my parents told her she could update. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I looked at them in total disbelief and asked them if all of them were thinking correctly. I asked them in what universe would it be fine to give my little sister the business I worked hard for. As I continued yelling at them, I heard my spoiled little sister getting ready to throw a tantrum. She started crying and looking at my dad with her sad little puppy eyes. She told my dad about how she didn't have a job and how my dad promised her to make her a boss. I looked at my dad angrily and told him why she's raising her like this. I told him that if my sister wanted to become her own boss, then she's free to start her own. My dad yelled back trying to lecture me, telling me that I should help out my family. I told all of them to fuck off and leave my shop. Once I said that, my sister began crying and throwing a tantrum. Mind you that this is a 23-year-old grown woman, crying because someone won't give her a company she didn't work for. I told them to leave and that I didn't want to see them ever again. I thought that would be the end of it, until the following week. I arrived to drop off lunch for my workers because they were hungry, and to my surprise my sister was inside my office. She was sitting down at my chair and asked me what I was doing here. I looked at her angrily and told her to get out of my shop immediately or I will call the cops. She argued with me that my dad told her that I agreed to their demands and make her the new boss. I took a quick breath and told her firmly. I told her to leave now, or I'm calling the cops. She didn't budge, so I ended up calling the cops on her, explaining my situation. Despite their arrival, my sister still claimed she had every right to be there. They had no choice but to arrest her for trespassing on my property. After the arrest, I had legal action to make sure she doesn't bother me again. I obtained a restraining order, and had legal boundaries in place to protect me and my business. My parents called me afterwards yelling at me. I told them all to go to hell, and to have fun in the retirement home once they're old because my sister won't be there for them.